Hello there, and welcome to this very special edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm joined by somebody I've been a fan of for nearly 20 years. Somebody very, very special in the wrestling sphere. He's a man who's worn many hats. He's been a wrestler, he's been a writer, producer. And in his early days, where he is now in Michigan, he started his career out as a referee. He was a color commentator. He even dabbled as a GM in his early days, back in the late 90s. I'm joined by the one and the only Jimmy Jacobs. Jimmy, thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you for that very kind and generous introduction.
Nope, no problem at all. Listen, as somebody in the early 2000s, my early teens, who had far too much time in his hands to watch wrestling and spent too much of his youth on the internet looking up obscure American wrestling, be it IWA Mid-South, be it Ring of Honor, for that 12-year period you were there. Getting to chat to you today is really, really cool for me, so I do appreciate you taking the time. Listen, we touched on just before we came on camera here. Now you've been enjoying a break from wrestling for the time being. How are you finding life since leaving AEW?
Unexpected. I'd been running so consistent and fast for so long. I started in the wrestling business when I was 15 years old.
Mhm.
And by the time I was 18 and had graduated high school and had a car, it was just like anytime, any place, anywhere for a while for any amount of money. So when I resigned from my position at AEW, I mean, at that point, I had turned down, I can count on two hands the number of times, maybe one hand, the number of times I had declined doing a wrestling show for a non-wrestling reason. To go, hey, I'm just going to take today off, or I'm going to do something in my personal life and not do a wrestling show. I just didn't do it. For the year and a half I was with AEW, I didn't take a day off. And then once everything caught up with me, I was like, yep, I need some time. So
Y- Yeah, that's natural. That's life as well. Like I mean, when the news kind of broke in last October that you were stepping away from AEW, there was no salacious rumors. There's like, as often things happen in wrestling, if somebody leaves a company, people try to spin stories and whatnot. But the fact that it was just kind of, listen, guy decided to take a break from wrestling. It's kind of really refreshing that somebody knows their own boundaries enough to kind of say, listen, I've been working in backstage capacities in numerous different companies and on screen doing incredibly cool things throughout the 2000s, knowing themselves well enough and being at a company like AEW, we're probably allowed to take a step away once your contract's fulfilled.
yeah, I stayed off the internet completely
Okay.
after
Okay.
I talked to Tony. There was a lot of misconceptions about my time in
Yeah.
AEW and what my role was there. You know, I've been off of Twitter for
Yeah.
years, but I was informed probably about 6 months into my time at AEW, this narrative that was going on
Mm.
online that just like couldn't have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
Like I'm used to, being a performer, being in the wrestling business. I'm used to being criticized
Yeah.
or critiqued by my performance, but for what I do, it was a whole new thing for me that I still honestly haven't gotten used to, which was being judged by lies. And they were. It was just
Yeah.
like there were lies about me and my career. Probably starting. It
Yeah.
started after I left WWE. After I was fired from WWE,
Mm.
there were people that had this narrative that I was a leak in WWE, which I
Mm.
absolutely 100% was not. Um, I even tried to put it together. It's like where are they even getting this from? I
Yeah.
couldn't even quite put together where that was gotten from. But it was
It's
it was supposedly I was a leak for it's called like Wrestling Sheet, Pro Wrestling
okay.
Sheet. Is that what it's
Okay.
called?
Okay.
Do
Could
you know
be.
who
Yeah.
leaked that?
I don't. Sorry. No. But listen, they're all much. They send different labels for different sites. Like it's a bit weird. Yeah.
Very nice gentleman who I had not spoken to until until I was fired from WWE. God,
Mm.
I forget his name. Nice gentleman.
Okay.
He was the first. He was the one that broke the news about me being fired, and he knew the day after I was fired. He
Shit.
messaged
Okay.
me on Twitter to try to verify the news, which I didn't respond to, and he just released it the following week. But Ryan now. So that was just
Okay.
a complete fabrication, untrue to the core,
Yeah.
to the bone. Like that was not what I did at all. Like I didn't understand. I don't understand people that do leak things to
Yeah.
dirt sheets. It's like we're all in a
Yeah,
team trying to
yeah.
do something, and people that ruin it for the rest of us who we're trying to make a television show and,
Mm,
and product and exciting things
mm,
and to the best of our ability. We don't want that, leaking out what we're going to do or whatever's going on backstage. That's for us to do.
mm, mm,
And then the the idea of what my role was at AEW
mm.
was just completely untrue. Like
Yeah,
completely untrue. I would challenge anybody to name one segment that I wrote and produced at AEW to then criticize it because I didn't. That wasn't my job there.
yeah,
Like almost like at all. Mostly what I did at AEW was admin stuff. I was on the creative team, but
yeah.
people don't know what it is that they don't know the creative process.
Mm,
Even in the wrestling business, I was shocked when I got to WWE and I realized the wrestlers didn't know what the creative process was.
mm,
And so, of course, these fans online absolutely don't. And, it starts from a couple people, then everybody, like other people follow
mm.
suit. Um, people were saying I was doing the MJF stuff. I mean, I was seeing this stuff for the first time
Mm,
on TV like everybody else was.
yeah,
I heard, another uh, group of individuals claimed that I had brought because I did do the in Impact the Undead Realm.
mm,
Like I did write and produce that stuff, and if you don't like it, that's fine. That's totally like that's fair to say. I don't
yeah,
like this. This is crap. Whatever.
yeah,
Um, uh, this narrative that I brought that supernatural stuff into. I didn't at
yeah,
all. This wasn't true at all. These people have no idea what they're talking about,
yeah,
and I haven't spoken publicly on this, and I really wish to, but you asked me to do this podcast, and this is on my mind because the record needs to be set straight from my end. I'm not going to fight with people or
mm,
argue with people, but I am going to tell the truth. And the truth is, like, I wasn't writing AEW television, like, at all.
yeah. No, listen, I appreciate being so frank and honest about that. I think a lot of these people who like, be it inside the business or outside the business, they latch onto a narrative and they like to whip themselves into a frenzy online, whether it's true or not. And it could be applied to anything in modern life. So I think
Mm-hmm.
particularly post-COVID, you find a lot of people who want to critique other people's actual job performance in terms of what their behavior is like off screen, and they forget that wrestling itself is an escape for most of us. In terms of like, I work in finance, my day job. I do this kind of stuff here now as a creative outlet and kind of talking to people. I enjoy their work. Like I was going to talk to initially launch this conversation, talk about your work with the Age of the Fall stuff, try to get into your Ring of Honor stuff and your kind of creative process, even laugh about your the incident with the BTE stuff with WWE and like kind of the age I was at and the stuff you're doing with the list of Jericho. But like you're 100% right in terms of people hate watch AEW in particular, and they like to create narratives and then go online till about 5 or 6 in the morning, be it American. I'll be in work Irish time, which is 5 hours ahead of you, at like 10 in the morning, and or say even midday, which is 7 a.m. American time, and I'll see people online debating Dynamite or slating or something to that effect, just making up crap. And you're like, you realize that's 7 in the morning. What are you doing? So like I feel very, very sorry for like you had to go through all that and kind of people basically just lying about you and your character and what you've done. So I really do apologize for like just for people, wrestling fans more than anything for just starting shit. That kind of been easy to go through.
You're very kind. You don't obviously owe me an apology, but I appreciate the sentiment. And people are like, look, they're free to be critical of whatever they want to be critical of,
Mm,
and they're free to make up lies if that's if that's what they want to do. It's just it's an unfortunate thing that the digital space has replaced the real world in so many people's
mm,
lives. Um, and you can be critical of whatever wrestling product you want to be critical of, and
mm,
it's even fair to be critical of what I like and what I don't like, and look at different metrics and go, look, based on this metric, this isn't working. That's all fair stuff to do. It's like, but like, what do you want to do with your life, man? Do
Yeah.
you want to be a critic or creator? And it's a sad social commentary that
Hmm.
people have chosen uh, being a critic as opposed to being a creator. And I don't find that to be a particularly worthwhile endeavor, but
No.
people's lives, sadly, we're in a bit of a meaning crisis, I think, in our society, in our culture,
Yeah.
where people don't have proper meaning in their life.
Hmm.
They don't have proper aim. They don't have proper direction, and it will, like, if you don't have proper aim and proper direction and proper purpose, like something has to take the place of that. So
Hmm.
if you find identity and validation through what you put online to point out, look, this is
Hmm.
bad, and other people go, oh, you're so great because you pointed out stuff that's bad. It's like, okay, fine, guys, like, have it your way. I know it seems to be like in vogue to be critical of Tony Khan and his product, but like, look, Tony Khan has had a such a positive effect on the wrestling business that it can't be understated,
Hmm.
that so many more people are making a living and making good money and better money than they would have without Tony. Like, he really, and he, I don't want to betray his trust, but Tony takes that like really seriously, that so many people's jobs revolve around, what he does and the
Hmm.
decisions he makes. um, he takes that seriously, and not just you know the effect that AEW has had. Not just, there's been no better time to be a pro wrestler in the
Hmm.
last, since I started. I started in '99.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a hot time. But in the last 20 years, no better time to be a pro wrestler. There are so many jobs, so many guys making such good money, and WWE raised um, uh, the rates that they were paying the boys
Hmm.
right around the time that AEW started. I don't know if there's a direct correlation, because obviously they got the Fox deal and the Saudi Arabia
Hmm.
deal at the same time, so I'm sure that was a factor as well. But I I would guess, again, without being inside that company, I would guess that AEW's presence had something to do with the guys in WWE making more money. So everybody in the wrestling business is making more money because of Tony Khan, and his presence, the presence of his company, and what he chose to put on television also has affected how WWE, what they do.
Hmm.
Um, they had to sort of combat, what AEW is doing. Because AEW offered an alternative to WWE, and um, Triple H, I think, has filled a lot of those holes that were present when Vince McMahon was running things. But
Hmm.
uh, okay, be critical of AEW, be critical of Tony Khan, like,
Yeah.
okay. But as a guy that spent a year and a half with Tony and worked closely with him, um, you know, I'll never say a bad thing about him.
Yeah, and Tony, like I think a lot of the assumptions made about you in particular are based off one or two tweets that Tony was like jovially tweeting his like his love for you. He was calling you his wheelman as the two of you were. He was romanticizing the two of you driving through different states, getting from one show to another. So again, he's not just improved the life of wrestlers and people in the business, he's also enabled people to sit online and be critical and create a market and monetize being negative, who then I think you and I could probably have a sociological and psychological conversation here as an aside point, but there's a lot of people online disingenuously, ex people in the business, other people who are just bad actors in my view, who like to whip people into a frenzy and play on malleable minds online who don't necessarily, as I say, don't have a sense of belonging or purpose. And they
Yeah,
think by
absolutely.
sitting up till 7 in the morning deciding that something's bad because somebody told them it was bad
Mm.
on Twitter and things like that. That's indicative of modern society, and I think I can listen. I can throw this out there. I think COVID and kind of the way the world moved had a big part in how changing how we operate as society. But like you touched on. I wasn't going to get into this t necessarily, but in terms of kind of that creative process, like in terms of your own kind of piece with AEW, you talked about being kind of that more admin role. In terms of what was your kind of specific remit, without getting too into the weeds of like what you're doing, if you're comfortable kind of sharing any of that with us.
Yeah, so the creative team is the heartbeat of uh, the pro wrestling television, right? Everything. I'm not saying they're the most important part. It's just like it's the center,
Mm,
right? Like everything is downstream from what are we doing
mm,
creatively on our TV, and then the production can know what graphics to make and what music to get and to
mm,
this and that, and the travel needs to know who's coming to the show and the marketing over here and the digital thing. So it's like it's the center. Everything comes from the from what are we going to do on our TV show? Okay, now let's let the wrestlers know. Let's let the agents know. Let's let the producers know. Let's let who needs to know what when. So a lot of what I did at Impact for the last year and a half, I was there was also
mm,
largely admin. Like I was helping out creatively, but at the point I became less of an ideas guy and more of like I managed ideas. Like I
mm,
took the ideas of people in the creative team and I compiled a show, right? And then like at this is at Impact, right? Now
mm,
TNA. I was in touch with the travel department. I was in touch with the the production team in Nashville. I was in touch with the props guys. I was in touch with everybody because like someone on the creative team, someone in the center needs to get the information to the proper people. So basically at AEW, I was a channel for information.
mm,
That's mostly what I did. What I was tasked with was mostly like information flow.
mm,
Like I was around Tony all the time, so I would, um, and we would talk on the phone during the week. We would talk about what's going to be on the show, but it's like I'm there for him to
mm,
like, bounce ideas off of. Like
mm,
I know a lot about wrestling, so if he's got this idea and this idea, I can help him sort of craft it. But like I wasn't like
mm,
coming up with what's going on. I like so Donnie has ideas of what he wants to do. I then sort of organize that information, and then ultimately I give the information to the appropriate people at the appropriate time. That's
mm,
because you don't want too much information getting to too many people too soon, right? Because
mm,
things can change and this
mm,
and that, and you don't want leaks and whatever. So like there's like a proper flow of information of like who needs
mm.
to know what when,
Yeah.
and that's what I did. And that's what I was in charge of the formats, like the scripts
Mm,
formats, the
mm,
television formats.
mm,
I was in charge of that, and so I organized the information. Like, look, if he had ideas of what he wants to do, I would do like a first draft of what about this here and this here. We do this here,
mm,
put this here, put this here. So I would like help craft the
mm,
show,
mm,
right? Uh, but ultimately it was up to him. But
mm,
I would go, what if we do this first? What if we do this in the main event, and put this in here, like that.
mm.
Uh, but again, like my fingerprints, so like my creative fingerprints, really weren't on the show almost at all.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, so that's what I did, and especially on the live TV days when things are moving, things are changing. Like I'm just there in the office, like
mm,
getting everything out to the pre-tape crew and go, hey, we got this here, we need this
mm.
talent. Letting the coaches know, hey, you've got this match. Hey, right now this is the time, but that might change. Like that's what I was doing.
That's pretty
So
cool though. That's pretty cool in terms of being kind of in that big picture role. Like you're not necessarily in the weeds of the nuance of like the machinations of small things, but like how does it all fit together and how does this end up as a televised product? That's really, really cool. Like pivoting from what you're doing previously, maybe in WWE, where it's more specific, hands-on kind of specific segments and being kind of not necessarily graduated towards that bigger picture role. But that creative fulfillment, it's different, but I can imagine again you got a huge amount from it. Obviously, although it would be incredibly taxing and demanding on a weekly basis.
yeah, and the schedule for AEW was pretty challenging, just as far as like fly out Tuesday to do
Mm,
Dynamite Wednesday, fly home Thursday, fly out Friday, Collision Saturday, fly home Sunday. So Monday was generally speaking on
mm,
most weeks the only day I was home. So that
mm.
that was a, that was that was a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so that's what I did at AEW. That's a lot of what I did at um, Impact for the last like year and a
Mm,
half. It's just they're just different things. Like
mm,
yes, in WWE, it was like I'm in charge of a segment or a few pre-tapes. Each writer was
mm,
just like you really kind of just had like one thing that day or a couple small things. And so you can put all your attention on that. You can get in the weeds, get into all the exact execution of everything. And then as I went to Impact, um, because we had a much smaller team, I was doing that. I was helping write the shows, but also like producing and writing particular segments. Although
mm,
again, it was less writing in Impact. WWE was like with Vince, it was like you word for word, you're writing promos.
mm,
Impact wasn't like that almost at all. But yeah, then it was like having my hands in multiple things at
mm.
once. And towards the end of Impact, it was like I'm putting puzzle pieces together.
Yeah,
Like you guys are making the
yeah,
details, the coaches, the producers, the the talent, and sometimes day of when I'm producing pre-tapes, of
mm,
course, like I'm getting in the weeds. Then too, I did have a challenging time going back and forth between those levels of like the
mm,
big picture and then getting right down to the
mm,
specific things. Like that was something I had a challenging time doing. Tony was great at that. I was really
mm.
impressed by a lot of um, Tony's creative ability.
Brilliant.
Um, People might not like a show, but he was great at like big picture and then going right down to the exact
Mm,
execution, going back up, and so yeah, those are just they're just different roles and different things that the creative team needs, and wrestling fans is like uh, mostly don't understand that, and that's not even like
mm.
a slight. That's not even like
Yeah, yeah,
not like bad. It's like of course because you're just not in it. You don't
yeah.
know. Again, I was shocked at WWE, which going, oh my god, the wrestlers don't know the creative process here. They don't know why it's working this way, and I would hear stories from wrestlers about like their perspective on I was supposed to do this but then that got changed and like this whole drama of from their side of things, and I'm just thinking like oh no, that's not how it works. Just
Yeah, yeah.
you know it's like this back here. It's not like what you're talking about, but you don't know unless you're in something.
Hmm.
you know I thought when I walked into WB I was going to be like the guy that knew everything and all these guys are dumb. It took me I was in the room for an hour. I was like, oh my god, everybody's so smart here. Everybody's so creative here. But there are different sort of restrictions and boundaries there that made an already difficult job more difficult.
If hypothetically, like you kind of wrestling's in a good landscape now, where you've got three viable wrestling products as such. Like even within WWE, you can argue you've got three separate products, given that they're kind of three different rosters and creative teams and whatnot. Would you ever consider, like, obviously after a sustained break where you can kind of take a break, recharge, would you ever consider moving back to wrestling in a specific capacity? You might, like, if you went back to AEW, like it might be work remotely or work one show or not the other. Would you ever consider, or even go back to Impact or WWE? Is there any considerations on your end for doing that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I suspect I'll go back and work for one of those three companies in the you know fairly near future. I'm doing my best to sort of let go of the
Yeah.
steering wheel and not, forcing my will and being too anxious of going, oh no, I
Yeah.
need money, I need a job, and just letting whatever unfold in front of me. A lot of this, these last few months has just been sort of an exercise in faith, of going, okay, like I it's clear to me that I need to leave AEW and I don't know what's next, and just letting go of that and going, well, you don't need to know every single thing in the future. You just need to know the next step. And so I
Mhm.
made that next step. It was a very challenging decision to make. It was very difficult. It was very hard. Um, it was really hard.
Yeah.
Um, Tony was very kind. He was very accommodating, and welcomed me back. Whenever I want, and I deeply appreciate that. So yeah, I would imagine, you know, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I would imagine something like that will unfold at some point.
Yeah, but it's not. I felt like I'm somebody who had to take a step back from one of my own previous jobs for a good 6 months. like things work out. Things, I mean, in terms of everybody's got their own, they know themselves in terms of intuitively what's right for them. So listen, I'm sure you something brilliant across one of those companies or elsewhere will be on your doorstep before you know it. Listen, we've kind of I had planned to chat to you very much about your Ring of Honor history because I was a huge fan of that kind of 12-year run, like IWA Made South and what I touched on previously. Just very conscious of your time as well. I wanted to touch on the that Age of the Fall debut. Now I was somebody, I think, Jesus, I was 15 at the time. And again, I was looking up watching Ring of Honor videos that from there's one wrestling store in Dublin in a place in Stephen's Green Shopping Centre where they'd have DVDs, and I read online about this angle that went down, and I got a DVD and it had been cut out from the angle, but obviously the famous image of Jay Briscoe hanging upside down with you yourself and debuting with Necro Butcher, Tyler Black. What was that like at the time? Did you think, okay, this is something incredibly edgy, or am I playing with fire? Was it something you're aware of that this could go either way?
Uh, I thought it was a cool thing. Uh, it was a cool visual. I didn't realize like how I don't know, like how far it was.
Hmm.
People have said since, like, I think Gabe told me one time he wouldn't have done it again. Like he would never do something like that again. I'm pretty sure. I don't want to put words in his mouth. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I think he told me that, and it doesn't surprise me. Like other people have sort of said, like, yeah, that's not something you could do now, and like
Yeah.
maybe, but at the time it was just we were trying to come up with the coolest stuff we could for the debut of this this faction we were doing, and me, Gabe, and Tyler, Seth, put our heads together, and that came out, and it's interesting because it's like probably the thing in my career, my wrestling career, that people remember the most. It's also something. It's also like an angle. Like I'm really like I have a lot of embarrassment about it.
Yeah.
I kind of hate it
Okay.
because at the time I didn't see it for what it was. Uh, I thought, we had been doing this viral marketing thing um, leading up to it, and I thought, you know, are following along with this, and now they need all the answers to it, and this is the time for me to do this big monologue promo, and I didn't need to say anything. Like people don't remember the promo. Like it was, I felt so bad afterwards. Like I felt like, boy, that was a miss. Like what a misdirect on my part. I mean, it's like the reason why there's like writers and people in a creative team in the major companies. It's because you need other people who are creatively minded and see the big picture and just see how things work. You need another set of eyes on you to um, to see your blind spots. And Gabe did do that. Dude, the promo I had was longer than that. It was like a 5 minute promo, and what I had came in with was longer than that. And Gabe like trimmed me down, thank God. But yeah, it was like to me, it was like a total miss. I mean, the visual was awesome, and then as I'm doing right now, rambled for 5 minutes, and we didn't need any of it. If I could go back, if I could rewind time, do it all over again, I would have stood there, stood there, stood there, hit one line, and laughed. That would have been it. So
Well, at the same time, if Gabe's saying he wouldn't do it again, well, he did it the first time, and he wouldn't know he wouldn't do it again, having unless he's given it a go the first time. So like, listen, pushing the boundaries, it's brave more than anything, and you're trying to do something really cool, and it's something that's although you kind of view it as embarrassing, it's something that's lived on, and it's something that's very infamous among fans and people who are part of that Ring of Honor fandom at the time. Look back almost lovingly at like that image and the amount of people that were involved and what they went on to do, be it yourself, Tyler Black, Jay Briscoe, obviously. How fondly he's remembered now. But even then, looking like at different stages of your career, the work he did, like in that kind of 2011, 2015 period in Ring of Honor, where you're facing being Brian Danielson. You had a brilliant match with the now Corey Graves over in Middlesbrough in the UK, a street fight with him. You had rivalry with the likes of Steen and Generico. You've had even the likes of Caprice Coleman and Cedric Alexander. You had tag team matches with. So you're involved in a huge amount. And for those of us, again, as I touched on previously, who were like lovingly reference that kind of golden era of Ring of Honor, particularly the time when wrestling wasn't that enjoyable in the mainstream to as a an everyday consumer, I'll put it that way. You guys produced a product that I think will stand the test of time, and when we compare it to modern day products, I think it blows a lot of them out of the water, particularly on a weekly basis. So thank you very, very much for that. Listen, before I let you go, I one or two kind of small questions just to finish off. Like there was it was very, very funny at the time when you stepped away from AEW. Immediately there was speculation about where you might go next, and then somebody I think the very next day said you were suddenly signed to Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling just because you attended a wrestling show. I just wanted to put that to rest. You're not, to be clear, you're not joining Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling immediately off the back of taking a step back from wrestling.
So yeah, so I did do I worked with Scott, the
Yeah.
Scott Morris thing, and I did work with him on those shows that the events he had, and
Okay.
I think it was November. Like yeah, so there are a few commitments that I
Okay.
made before I left AEW, and I have um, uh, I have followed through on those commitments, and if I'm available moving forward, I'll work with Scott on Maple Leaf Pro for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's no contracts anywhere. I mean, I didn't have a contract per se for AEW or Impact or WWE. I was working,
Yeah.
uh, just a working agreement. So yes, I am helping out Scott with Maple Leaf Pro.
Okay, fair enough. Listen, thank you very much for being transparency on that. So my very, very last questions. Then, over the last 20 odd years, be it in ring, on camera, backstage, who's been your favorite talent to work with in any capacity, be it in ring as an opponent or a tag team partner or somebody you've produced? Oh, and conversely, you can avoid this question if you like. Who's your least favorite?
Yeah, I will probably avoid that
That's no
one.
problem. I completely.
Look, man, there are so many awesome people that I've worked with, collaborated with in various ways, whether that's our in-ring performances together, or writing a wrestling television show together, or writing promos together. Obviously, like Chris Jericho and I have a very good rapport, um, and he did in the last few months that I was at AEW, he did start to come to me, and we did start to collaborate together. So whatever fingerprints I do have on the AEW show, we're like helping out Chris with some of that stuff.
Brilliant.
Not probably not to the capacity that people think
Yeah.
when I say that. It's hard to even say some of this stuff because people think, "Oh, you wrote and produced." No,
Yeah.
like we would talk, and he would bounce ideas off me, and we would bounce ideas off each other. But like I did have create um, some creative fingerprints on the television show in the last couple months with Chris's stuff. But like small tangent. Uh, but what I did at AEW, it was consuming. It was
Mm,
like I didn't have a whole lot of capacity to even help write or produce anything else, like beyond just like, dude, I was in that office and like this was live television. Things were moving fast, so I didn't have a lot of capacity to even
yeah.
help out creatively too much. So Chris is obviously somebody that we have a great working relationship. The first name that came up, man, is like John Cena.
Okay.
Uh, like, not saying we had the greatest creative relationship, and he probably doesn't know me by name, but if I saw him, he would probably recognize me as the kid that drank a lot of Red Bulls. But I did work with John for the entire stuff he did with AJ Styles, probably in
Oh,
2016 or 17, and
brilliant.
then the stuff he did with Roman Reigns. Like before I got fired from WWE, like the last stuff I was working on was on SmackDown. It was Kevin Owens and Shane McMahon,
Yeah.
and on Raw it was Roman Reigns and John Cena. And I just have so much respect for John. He was the king there,
Mm,
and he used his position benevolently. He was out of anybody there, he could destroy you if he wanted, right? He was in
mm,
that position where if he wanted to, he could destroy you.
Hmm.
But he chose not to. He chose to be kind. He chose to be collaborative, and he would take ideas from whoever was in the room. And he was great, man. I really, when I got fired from WWE, like knowing that I would probably never work with John Cena again was like a sad,
Yeah.
one of the small sad things about that. But I mean, dude, there's so many guys. Geez, like just wrestling wise, me and BJ Whitmer had a
Yeah.
lot of time together and had really good chemistry. Alex Shelley, the same thing.
Yeah.
And Kevin Owens, Kevin
Hmm.
Steen,
Hmm.
up until the time that I got fired from WWE, like he and I had spent a lot of time together. We had a
Hmm.
lot of um, we teamed, we wrestled, and then in WWE we worked together a lot. So me and Kevin worked together a lot as well, and he's the man. And I mean, there's so many people.
Yeah, I mean, you're part of a really interesting time in WWE, particularly for a lot of us who are kind of almost considered lapsed fans who kind of watch wrestling habitually, for WWE particularly. Um, that 2014 through 17, you were there 2015 through 17. That particular period, it was really intriguing, and it felt like there was a new energy within the company that hadn't been there for a long time. It felt like television could be quite formulaic, but those rivalries you referenced, be it John Cena and AJ Styles, one of my favorite matches of all time from that 2017 Royal Rumble, um, that kind of brief program with John Cena and Roman Reigns as well, and the kind of is it real, is it not real kind of dynamic. And again, it was pre-COVID, pre-AEW, where people weren't necessarily fully like in the weeds and invested in what happens backstage. People were more invested in what's going on screen. It was a brilliant escape. It was great to have that realism, and I'm sure you're a huge part of it. So, Jimmy, I just want to say thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for everything you've done in the industry. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do in the years and months ahead. I've no doubt wherever you land, be it TNA, WWE, AEW, you're going to do something incredibly special, and what we enjoy as fans, will enjoy it hugely as well.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate your kindness and allowing me to express what I needed to express. So
No, listen, anytime. Listen, hopefully keep in touch, and hopefully we can have sit down and go and get into the weeds of your actual in-ring career as well one day as well.
thanks so much, man.
No problem. Cheers. Have a good day.